We're just a warm-up act for James.
We are. I'll think of it.
And we're getting paid shit money as well.
Speak for yourself. I'll begin, I suppose. I'll be quick with this part. My name is John Harris. I'm a journalist. I write for The Guardian. I write for Mojo about music. I used to write about music for Q magazine while I'm still here. 31 years ago, I was writing for a music weekly called Sounds. I was 20 years old. And they sent me to a venue in Oxford to review a new group called Manic who had just released a record called Motown Jump. And I saw that gig, and in the sense that it was the first time I'd written about music and it all flowed out. It sort of changed my life quietly. I think if you'd have asked me that night, having seen you play for what, about 25 minutes? Yeah, you last kid. Whether you'd have a career that stretched over the next 3 decades, I'm not sure I'd have believed them, but that's what happened. If you'd have told me I'd have been in Kingston's answer to the Camden Palace, asking you questions in front of an audience of 1,000, I'm told, I would definitely have disbelieved you, but that's where we are. It's a pleasure to be here. First of all, will you join me in welcoming Nicky Wilde? Right, we're going to talk for about 20 minutes, and then James is going to come on and play acoustically. There are 2 houses, to use an old-fashioned term. There are 2 sets of people coming in, so I've got 2 sets of different questions. If anyone's got tickets for both, you will not hear the same conversation twice. Nick, I'm going to ask you about the ultra-vivid lament and where it came from and what it tells us, I suppose. Tell me about lockdown and where this record sits as regards lockdown and what lockdown meant for you creatively.
I think the genesis of the album was slightly before lockdown, with the Secret Weird List and Orwellian, but then certainly as lockdown kicked in, I had a massive write-in, lyrically, a huge kind of, I just went deep into myself. I went, as J.G. Ballard would say, the inner migration, and I just found, I switched off really, and just the ability to dissect my own inadequacies and my own thoughts and stuff like Quest for Ancient Colour, and just came flowing out really easily and into the ways of love. Just loads of songs, ideas just pouring out. I actually started reading again, because I hadn't read for a long time, and certain books.
What did you read?
The Jill Lepore, If Then, that had a huge influence. Susan Sontag, Against Interpretation in particular.
Orwell?
Oh, of course, always. Always. But John's the Orwell prize-winning author here, not me. And I had a real clarity of vision because I just found myself deeply interested in myself.
Because the world shut down, there was nowhere else to look.
Yeah, and I just that internal investigation of why I exist and why the band exists and what does any of it mean anyway. The track Complicated Illusions, kind of reading loads of philosophy and Derrida or Derek, however you say it. Various people said
no one knows.
No one knows. And I was writing that song and I realised really that I'm searching for so much when all I wanted really was the comfort of my mum's voice. So the rhythm of her voice, which I could rejoice in, which I couldn't get anymore. And I was just thinking, why am I kind of rejected a lot of stuff through learning.
So it's a record about your inner life, and it's a record about loss of various kinds, right?
Yes. I lost both my parents in the last 2.5, 3 years, so that kind of hangs over the album. But that can be joyous as well, just waking up every day and realising how much I kind of was so grateful that I had them. So it wasn't all negative, but and just a general kind of rejection of endless culture and digital coercion that I felt kind of under siege by. I had it really easy in lockdown, I just want to make out. I got a nice house and a garden and, I just locked myself away, so I was no victim in this. But I just felt a real sense of comfort came on. James hated it, but I was like, I just embraced it.
The lyrics, as much as they're about you and your inner life, they're also quite sort of aphoristic. They're just sets of 2 lines that sort of work on their own. One of them I underlined as I was thinking about this morning, which is the first couplet, the first 2 lines in Into the Waves of Love, where you say, I don't know what it is that I believe in, but it involves misery and keeping still. Which put me in mind of that Ritchie line in Faster, I know I believe in nothing, but it's my nothing. They're quite similar lines, aren't they?
They are. They're kept from the same cloth and the same. I think with me, it's much more sense of. There must be some narcissism involved with that. I can't deny it. Some nihilism, but it's just that idea of keeping still and the wash of melancholia entering my brain and my body. It's always given me a great sense of comfort. And that was just that kind of really highlighted during lockdown. It just kind of came over me.
And Orwellian would sort of mark your re-entry into the fray. Again, to announce your sort of comeback, saying it seems impossible, it feels impossible, to pick a side. Yeah. That's a hell of a thing to say. In a culture where one has to choose between Leave and Remain, or Corbyn and Johnson, or Vax and anti-Vax, to sing that and to write that, it's quite something.
Yeah, it was deeply influenced by Going Underground by the Jam. I must have listened to that 80 to 100 times, and the idea of felt like being overwhelmed by a constant discourse that actually led to no answers whatsoever. I don't know if it's just getting old, or it's me being weak, or me hiding away. This probably is an element of that. But the idea of just kind of boarding yourself in and going underground, and just the impossibility of choice. It came out in that song, really. And I know some people think that's just a way of giving up, I guess, but it didn't feel like that to me.
When you play those songs live, to commit to being non-committal, do you know what I mean? When bands play things with vim and passion, usually or often, it's because there's a clear-cut stance involved, right? Bands take stances, and the reverse of that happens on this record. This is about not doing that.
Yeah, it is full of confusion and doubt. It's intrinsically linked with a weariness, I guess, of all forms of culture. Having said that, I think we're one of the most committed live bands there's ever been, because if we're not committed, which is really awful if we're not committed. You know, if we just come on stage and coast it, you know, them lot know it and we know it. It doesn't, the magic doesn't happen. You know, if I can't do a jump, or if James can't do a twirl, we just come off stage feeling rather belittled. And that does happen because we're getting old. But I think commitment to all our best records are made with a really severe commitment to the cause, stylistically and conceptually. It doesn't always happen, but the best ones are when it's the Holy Bible, or Ultra Bit Lament, or wherever everything must go. They have a real concept behind them. But if you're not committed, you know, it just doesn't quite hit the mark.
And the concept here, I mean, this is too reductive and it'll be a bit crass, but it's refusal, it's rejection, right?
I think it is. But it's not refusal without knowledge. It is trying to take in every side and finding the impossibility to come to a decision. I mean, I do find it really hard to make decisions anymore. I think it's because I learn to fucking drive. You're like destroying me, indicating and looking behind you, stuff like that. Making a decision every minute that you could kill someone.
What, that uses up your decision-making factor?
It really fried my brain.
I'm glad I've never driven on the same road as you.
There's no instinct involved. It's not like a collage driving, which is how I did my life.
I was saddened when I discovered we learned to drive. Yes. There are two people in the world that I was saddened to learn they'd learn how to drive. One was Paul Weller and the other's you.
I'll take that.
Now, this is sort of a cliche already. The Clash meets ABBA, the shorthand description of this record.
Yeah.
I don't know which one to ask you about first. Why ABBA? Where does ABBA come from? Where do ABBA sit in your sort of field of vision?
Well, I think in the lexicon of our life, you want to go look at Motorcycle Agonist, the runner, the guitar, is Dancing Queen, you know. James said that way back when. And it's always, a lot of this record is our mums and dad's record collections, you know. And that could be, it could be Crystal Gale, it could be the Carpenters, and it could be ABBA or Glenn Campbell. And the sounds, the way those records were produced, and obviously James learning the piano, just resonated. And
their collaboration was sad, always at the same time,
yeah, I think it's a period generally in music where some of the saddest songs ever written were massive hits. The kind of euphoric nature of pop now, which has to be incredibly up, whereas you know some of those records in the 70s were just innately depressing. But massive. You know, Wichita Lineman is just heartbreaking.
Yeah, yeah.
And SOS, where this, you know, Don't You Make My Brown Eyes Blue by Crystal Gale.
Yeah. No, me knowing you is the biggest bomber ever. No, in these something empty rooms, children won't play and all that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're crucified, aren't they? When we spoke last week, getting ready for this, I pointed out to you that thinking about these two superficially unlikely reference points somehow joining together is nothing new, right? There have been other examples. Which record was meant to be Van Halen play Tamla Motown?
Heavy metal Tamla was meant to be postcards from me. I have been derided. I get derided a lot. I do look now and again at fan stuff and it's like, oh, he's off again. But I think the Clash ABBA thing, actually people said, oh, they pulled it off this time. He's not talking shit. But that, I mean, Orwellian and Secretly Admissed, which were two of the first tracks, did really feel, obviously, James learning piano just totally reconfigured the way the songs were coming out. As you know, he's kind of, he doesn't want to explain why in his, you know, particular I'm not talented kind of way. But obviously he is, and he knows the tricks involved.
I wanted to ask him that, yeah. It's a shame. Maybe he'll explain when he comes on how you sort of emulate ABBA, what musicologically or whatever is involved in doing it, because it ain't easy.
No. You'll just say it's driven by the lyrics.
Yeah.
It's not like taking off the trogs or something.
No.
There's a level of sophistication.
A real sophistication. And to rein ourselves in, because obviously sometimes we can be incredibly loud, incredibly direct. But sophisticated is good. I really want it to be a seductive album that draws you in. And that reins ourselves in. Me and Sean really rein ourselves in. It's the softest Sean has ever played drums. You know, I actually put some effort into getting a bass sound.
The Swedish guys were good.
Yeah.
Why was it so important that this album be number one to the point that for a week it seemed to all but consume you?
Anyone who knows.
Incidentally, anyone who bought a ticket for this helped.
Thank you very much. I've always been. I grew up with Guinness Book of Hit Records, you know, and I was just obsessed with chartology, if there is such a thing, you know, when some kind of nothingness didn't get in the top 40, I think we'd had 32 consecutive top 40 hits, legitimate ones, and I was crushed.
That's the Ian McCulloch one.
Yeah, I was crushed. I was crushed. I still am. And you know, we've had 5 albums that went in at number 2, all really like Know Your Enemy came out on Mother's Day. We sold 64,000 albums and we ended up being number 2. George Michael came out and Everything Must Go. We've had some massive, I know this is boring for most people, but we've had some huge selling records. I mean, The Greatest Showman beat Les Andy. Andy finished me off. That was a low point.
You've silenced me with that.
And we've got 4 number 2 singles, or 5 number 2 singles as well. So that was a lot of records.
But also it fits the record. If you're going to sound like ABBA, then you don't want to be hanging around at number 7.
No. And the fact that ABBA came back, week before the album was released. Proper zeitgeist.
I am going to move. We have about 10 minutes thereabouts left, and we have been sent questions in advance by people here. I think they're here anyway. They'll be in the next audience, so I'll see. I don't know whether someone called Susanna is here. There may be several people here called Susanna. She asks, how much was David Bowie an influence on the Ultra Vivid Lament? She thinks Black Diary entry, the Mark Lanigan song, the one you do with him, has a similar feel to Black Star, the last Bowie album. Was that deliberate, she asks?
Yeah. John in particular absolutely loved Black Star. I mean, I didn't drive back then. Sean used to pick me up everywhere, and it was literally on every second of the day, on repeat. And I think it did feed into the record. I mean, he does anyway, always, because he's just the ultimate pop star. So, it's always something to look at to. But I think Black Star did have an influence, certainly the way Sean looked at music in particular.
Good spot, Susanna, if you're here. Simon Cole here. Good. Hello, Simon. Right, another good question. The question about an album very close to my heart personally, which is relevant here in the sense that I think it's in a strand of your records in which this latest one sits.
Lifeblood, here we go.
Lifeblood. Is this happening, these things?
So
you always get a Lifeblood question.
Always. It's the album everyone had that no one bought.
I got mine for nothing. We used it as the incidental music on a Newsnight report. That did my bit for life. Simon asks, having seen anniversary edition reissues for Generation Terrace Gold, it even Gold Against the Soul, for fuck's sake. Holy Bible, everything must go, this is my truth, send away the tigers, and apparently know your enemy.
Yeah.
As well. When does Lifeblood get some love? And that's from me as well.
Woo!
I know some really good stuff that I got off Lifeblood, because we did 3 weeks in New York with Tony Visconti, which we never used. We sort of went away and we used a bit of it, but a lot of it is still there. So there's some good stuff to be
What are their alternate Tony Visconti versions of, song-wise?
Solitude Sometimes Is, Cardiff Afterlife, Emily, maybe one more which I can't remember.
Okay.
Yeah, they were actually just too prosaic. Surprisingly, they were quite rock.
Right.
That's not what we were
after. So, in summary, your answer is it's a distinct possibility in the fullness.
Yeah, I mean, I know everyone thinks we just slag it off all the time, but it's not that. It's just there's certain elements of it just felt, to be honest, it was just at the wedding at number 13. Like, to me, that was death. So 27,000 to go in at number 13.
They felt underground when they number 100.
Yeah. Different era.
Okay. Mark Burton asks a quite pertinent question. Who decides the set list? And are there any songs that any of the three of you refuse to play anymore? Good question.
I wouldn't say I decide the set list, but I'm the only one who gets around to doing them. And it just becomes increasingly problematic because you're aware of fans wanting certain songs, you're aware that just vocally or drum-wise or stuff I can't even play, so it does become something of a minefield, undoubtedly. We haven't played any Holy Bible songs since we did the anniversary tour, simply because we were totally in the moment. We went for the full dress, the full hatred, it's a real state of mind. It's really hard to play faster next to your level alone. They don't sit well with us because it's a different kind of attitude. But there are Motown Junkie who stop playing because we just can't keep up with it. We get so energized by it that we're fucked by the end of the day. Yeah.
The praising copy.
There are certain songs that, we've got a couple more gigs at the end of the year and we are practicing out some more stuff. We did 7 songs off the new album on this tour, which is a lot for us, and we really enjoyed doing that because usually, what it's like, you're down to 3 after the second gig, just bashing out the old ones.
You mentioned lockdown earlier. George Cook, are you here? Hello, George. I don't know what George did in lockdown, but he asks you, did you learn anything new, like baking? I was going to make a facetious banana bread comment, and I didn't. But did you acquire any skills or attitudes that you didn't have?
I did reacquaint myself with the ability to do absolutely fuck all on it. It was like being in university again. It was amazing. I was watching shit telly all the time. I'm good telly, just read. But yeah, I did.
Did you get asked to do a Twitter listening party? Or was that a sore subject?
Well, that's something I never do. I have no desire to interact with fans on a digital level.
That's not true. You're on Twitter. You're on Twitter quite a lot.
Instagram is visuals.
Talking of visuals, Christina, no sooner you may be here. Is the blue you here, Christina? You Christina at the front? Wow. Well, that's a great question. Is the blue camo dress going to make an appearance?
It's a museum piece, man. It's ready for the V&A exhibition. I've still got it. Before lockdown, actually, myself and my wife archived all the band's clothes, all the spray painted shit, everything. We vax-packed it, labelled it. She's a librarian, so she's like a real dictator. Everything was ordered and washed and ironed and stored. So it's all there waiting for something sometime.
There's a question here. It doesn't make any sense to me at all from Colin S. But it makes sense to you. He says, I saw a great support band at the Marquee. They were supporting a band, I think, called Cheap and Nasty.
Yeah.
What do you remember from that show?
Absolutely. We supported the Throbs at the Mark.
Well, the Throbs may as well have been called Cheap.
They were wonderful. I love the Throbs. The Cut Price Guns N' Roses and one good song. They did
like Gun and Rose. One of these.
They did a cover of Bank Robber, a really good cover of Bank Robber. But I can't remember Cheap and Nasty. Say that again?
Oh, it was the Throbs.
There we go. Yeah, that was brilliant. We were the support band. I love that. The Marquee probably our favourite venue in London. That and the Story were just such amazing places to play. It was brutal. And both demolished.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Marquee was just the first time I've ever had a frozen margarita.
If anyone has no sense of what the Manics were like at the Marquee, which was a spectacle I saw on more than a few occasions, if you go on YouTube and you search Manics Yamaha Band Explosion,
yes.
You probably all know this, given that you're here, but you see you playing under a blizzard of cans.
It's amazing. I loved it. I can still taste the beer. The hairspray and the glamour and the sweat. Yeah, it was. And Gary Crowley was doing that, I think. He was. Did an interview backstage, yeah. In fact, the Marquee is the only place I can remember we did an encore at it was a different gig. We didn't want to do it, but we kind of coerced them to do it, and we took so long to do it. By the time we went back out, everyone had fucked off. It's true. Like two stragglers down the front.
Yeah, that shows you how far we've all come in 31 years. So on that note, in a minute, James is going to come on and play. Nick and I are going to leave the stage and come back for the second house, so to speak. All that remains for me to do is to please ask you to join me in thanking Nick.